Hello everyone, I'm Max, and today we are going to examine another awful situation involving you. Julia Simmons resides with divorced Stephen Nicholas, a day trader in his three-bedroom house outside of Portland, Oregon. As reported by Stephen, Julia and he first connected online when she was trying to find a place to lease. She found Stephen to be amiable and charming. When they began sharing a home, Stephen got to know Julia's 20-year-old daughter, Rhonda, who is 10 years his senior. He believed she was the most stunning lady he had ever seen. He had never before witnessed Stephen fall in love, and it was difficult not to be infatuated with Rhonda. In addition to her stunning appearance, Rhonda had an amazing personality that left everyone in awe. As their romance grew, Stephen and Rhonda became increasingly serious. The pair ultimately chose to stay together, and Rhonda took up residence in Stephen's apartment while Stephen and Rhonda went on dates. He became close with her family, especially her sisters Tessa and Melanie. When Stephen and Rhonda started their romance, she thought Stephen was hilarious and lively, which allowed her to relish spending time with him. Years passed while they were together, and Stephen and Rhonda maintained their joint residence as a devoted pair, but they never got married. Rhonda pondered over what it would have been like to wed Stephen. Friends were aware of her intense desire to marry, and they perceived her as holding out hope, as Stephen asserted that they were preparing to tie the knot in the summer of 2009, according to his schedule. But they did have a child together, a girl, and became the happiest parents. In her life, her daughter emerged as the center of Rhonda's universe. Rhonda loved being a mother and devoted time to her daughter, but she also longed to begin her modeling career again. Rhonda was at her heaviest after giving birth to their daughter, and Stephen declared that Rhonda thought he was nasty. They agreed to hike the 25 miles, combining the top Oregon trails in an attempt to lose weight following delivery. Stephen said about their daughter, everything was going smoothly in his and Rhonda's connection, and they hardly ever argued, saying he thought they had turned into more powerful than before. Previously, however, Rhonda's friends told a different story. They disclosed that Rhonda had shared with them Rhonda's violent behavior towards Steve, once used a camera to snap images of her behind, using a mirror to record bruises from battle on March 16, 2009, with Stephen. On the 23-year-old Rhonda's embarkation on a hike at the Eagle Creek Trail, Stephen reported that they began their hike and the weather was lovely. However, Stephen subsequently asserted that Rhonda began to act peculiarly. Rhonda questioned him on what would occur if something had ever happened to her, and if he would look after their daughter. So naturally, when the weather started to deteriorate, Stephen told Rhonda that it was time to return home. Rather than turning back, Stephen reported back that Rhonda wrapped herself with a towel, declaring herself as Supergirl, and took off down the slick little path. Stephen stated that he saw Rhonda trip and fall over Eagle Creek's edge. Trail comes about 150 feet after Rhonda. Stephen went off the Eagle Creek Trail, stating that he descended to the ravine by foot, where she had arrived as a result of his unable to access cell service and kept her body. He attempted to dial 911 but had no service, leaving him with nothing to do but leave her behind. Stephen strolled to the trail's beginning, where he eventually succeeded in contacting emergency. Shortly later that day, emergency personnel extracted Rhonda's body. According to Stephen, Rhonda's family was emotionless during her memorial service. Stephen, having packed away his and their daughter's belongings, relocated to the other side of Oregon, where he lives with his daughter. Moving away from his family left Rhonda's family wary of the situation. Considering the events that transpired between the two of them in the minutes before Rhonda's passing, in 2006, Stephen made a choice to leave the United States countries to China. This ruling signified the start of a new phase of his life, accompanied by his small daughter. Stephen chose to relocate to the city of Wuyi, which is located roughly 75 kilometers away from Shanghai. Stephen was a Chinese resident in his initial marriage and emerged a passion for the nation and its citizens. Stephen got a job in China while residing there to instruct Chinese business people in English. Rhonda, his daughter, was adjusting to life in China in a matter of 2 months. After being there, she had developed fluency in Mandarin. Both Stephen and his daughter were doing well during that period. Stephen met and fell in love in China, alongside Landy Yin Yan. Landy, a female, and his daughter forged a close relationship, with Landy adopting the persona of a motherly figure. Stephen was grateful for Landy's intervention and welcomed the function as a parent figure to his daughter. After dating Stephen for a year, Landy opted to move their partnership to the next level by proposing to Landy. In February, she said yes to his delight. Flying back in 2015, Stephen and his daughter returned to the U.S., where the pair intended to get married. They made the decision to hold 2 ceremonies, one in China and one in America, to satisfy the needs of their respective families and friends. Stephen, a friend, and his daughter arrived one day prior to his arrival in the U.S. When they stepped off the aircraft in San Francisco to make their connection during the journey to Oregon, an officer arrived and told him that they had to hold him for a while due to something. He had no idea something was up with his suitcase, and this meeting would trigger a series of incidents that would alter his existence. The police showed up endless minutes later and kept Stephen away from his daughter. He was unaware the entire time that he had been diligently putting his girlfriend Rhonda's death, looking into questionable situations about Rhonda's descent from Eagle Creek, urged them to continue the investigation. Traveling, they ultimately arrived at the conclusion that Stephen was responsible for Rhonda's death. Mother had played a crucial role in maintaining the inquiry was ongoing. She made contact to the detectives, frequently inquiring. For updates, Stephen was taken into custody by the police for the murder of Rhonda at the airport and extradited to Oregon. When detained, he stated that he believed in his dream. Stephen hoped to awaken and discover that he is home in China, but with Landy at his side. This was actual reality, not a nightmare. At first, Stephen's bail was set at $2 million. He blew $1 million over the next 14 months in prison pending his trial. The judge lowered Stephen's bail to $250,000, and his representative obtained the bond, after which Stephen was freed with an ankle monitor upon discovering Rhonda's relatives. Stephen had been taken into custody for her. They were ecstatic to hear about the murder. Being aware that justice was finally being specifically served, the mother of Rhonda could hardly conceal her feelings as she, after they learned the news, they started crying. Stephen's arrest created a feeling of comfort and solace to Rhonda's family members who had spent years grieving her loss. Following Stephen's apprehension, his lawyer took his research group to the Eagle Rhonda, fell to her on the Creek Trail. They desired to carry out experiments after their death to demonstrate to the judge that Rhonda fell in an incident without being prodded by Stephen. The defense lawyer for Stephen said, "The Eagle Creek path is among the most renowned trails in the gorge of the Columbia. Due to the area's natural beauty during Stephen's initial hearing, the physician who conducted Rhonda's autopsy following her Eagle Creek fall found that all of Rhonda's wounds were beneath her waist. This revelation was essential to Stephen's defensive plan, as it gave them a chance to assert that Rhonda killed herself. The defense team for Stephen contended that Rhonda's depression and her description relationship served as signs that she had decided to end her own life through. By providing this proof, they sought to cast doubt on the theory of the prosecution that Rhonda was shoved by Stephen, resulting in the wounds that caused her to pass away. Stephen subsequently stated that Rhonda was melancholy and made several attempts to end her life. Before they ever had the chance to meet, relatives refuted these claims and said Stephen had lied to her family members. They maintained that Stephen was accusing Rhonda of sacrificing herself to divert attention away from him after he allegedly killed her. Stephen Rhonda, who additionally battled drug abuse since he was 12 years old, said that she experimented with a number of medications and had conducted a variety of experiments with chemicals. But the coroner's report simply indicated the existence of tiny amounts of marijuana and the prescription drugs for anxiety and depression Rhonda was experiencing as a result of battles with troubling postpartum evidence surfaced. During T's preliminary hearings, murder illuminating the participation. It was disclosed about Stephen that Stephen having taken part in a romance relationship with the 16-year-old Rhonda. This revelation brought up Sister Melanie eyebrows given Stephen's 30-year-old age. Melanie remained underage in the state, brought the argument to the court that Stephen's unsuitable partnership with Melanie might be a possibility reason to kill Rhonda. Rhonda had grown conscious of her husband's behavior behind her back, causing conflict and a potential reason to murder her after Rodonna's murder led to Stephen's arrest. He was charged with 2 counts of third degree, 3 counts of sexual assault in the third degree sodomy, with reference to his connection to Melanie Casto, sister of girlfriend Rhonda, while waiting 2005 trial for the murder of Rhonda Stephen, entered a guilty plea to 2 charges of misuse. The declaration that Stephen signed read, "I engaged in sexual activity with Melanie Casto twice." But Stephen stated that he felt forced to, recognizing the abuse and that his statement was false. Stephen claims that the main reason he argued that he would be permitted by law to battle and perhaps win back custody. Stephen stated about his daughter that he was frantic and yearning to have his daughter returned. Nevertheless, the state asserted that the connection between Stephen and, after more than 4 years, Melanie and Stephen would acknowledge that he had a rapport with the teenage sister of Rhonda. The government displayed a text message. Rhonda wrote to her sibling, a teenager Melanie, who engaged in extramarital affairs with Stephen prior to their departure during the crucial trek up Eagle Creek, the day she perished in the text. In the statement, Rhonda called Stephen a piece of trash and mentioned that Stephen Melanie is going to harm Rhonda's mom, said Rhonda was aware of Stephen's efforts to put distance between Rhonda, and Melanie said that Rhonda cherished her little sister and desired to fix their relationship based on the state rather than everything in their relationship was going fine. Stephen and Rhonda, as Stephen asserted, the more evidence was presented to the court, proving that Stephen was living a deviant history. It was discovered that just 6 months after his daughter's mother, Rhonda, died, and Stephen was taken into custody and accused of 5 sexual offenses, insults for supposedly coming into contact with the 13-year-old. Stephen denied these claims that uphold his innocence. Nevertheless, he later acknowledged mailing Send a provocative text message, a note with an image of him without a shirt. He acknowledged the victims the unsuitability of his behavior and admission to a single charge of sexual offense at one of Stephen's preliminary hearings that the state offered the court using images that Rhonda took recording Rhonda's damaged back. Best friend reported seeing Rhonda, and Stephen and her had a couple fights when she was on Rhonda and I over the phone, and I could hear them quarreling in the background beside these images, which the court was also shown evidence from Stephen's former spouse, who asserted that he had tried to engulf her and toss her over their 8th-story apartment's railing in Stephen, was not prosecuted in November 2003. Any criminal activity in China pertaining to this incident, which he refuted, claims that Rhonda's family vehemently feels that Stephen, her lover, they believe he is to blame for her demise. Killed her in order to profit from a life the insurance coverage he had obtained on her, which he had just lied, grew. Her mother said to her suspicions that Stephen wasn't winning a significant sum of money through day trading in the year prior and was not in a steady financial situation. In addition, all those acquainted with Rhonda may confirm the awareness of her intense affection for her daughters, and there is no way she would have taken her own life in May 2017 by leaping from Eagle Creek. The family of Rhonda was outraged and shocked. Upon discovering that the state had set up a conference with the defense and having reached a consensus, Stephen begged agreeable to the lesser accusation of criminal negligence in homicide, despite the government thought he had killed her. They were aware of the slim odds against him, owing to the absence of tangible proof demonstrating that he'd forced her off the trail. Stephen received credit at Eagle Creek for his service during the waiting period trial, but he was required to stay on parole. Stephen wore his ankle monitor for 3 years. Taken out and was allowed to leave custody, Stephen and his friends from T's family taking a nice They felt that the plea agreement was not just. He ought to have dealt with more repercussions for his conduct. During Rhonda's sentencing hearing for Stephen's sister, gave a powerful speech that she voiced her annoyance and unhappiness in his direction and informed him that he'd ruined her entire family and had caused Rhonda's great suffering and anguish. Mother also conveyed her perplexity and exasperation, saying that she was unable to recognize the ways in which Stephen may have away from their family, her daughter. According to Shad Ed Stephen, he had not pushed Rhonda but accepted the arrangement since there was not much time left for him to restore his daughter's custody. He said that he had been prepared to confront the repercussions of his acts for the purpose of his kid. But in spite of Stephen's asserts, Rhonda's friends and family refused to be persuaded. In a 2018, Stephen revealed in an interview a shocking claim pertaining to Rhonda's fate. Stephen said about his war comrade on the day of her tragic fall, "She was only living when he strolled into Eagle Creek and discovered her." The interviewer at that point asked Stephen if he had placed Rhonda in from her suffering on that day. Stephen replied by posing a question to the interviewer, fictitious query, "If you shoot your war friend, you should see how hurtful this is." He claimed that he was involved in the murder. Such an action might be regarded as a justifiable killing, even though it was still a murder, even though Stephen never acknowledged that his remarks had hurt Rhonda. Mentioned the potential for his participation in the 2017 death of Rhonda. Mother submitted a Social Security application. Perks as a survivor on the mother of Rhonda's young daughter, asserted that she shared a home with her grandchild and she pledged to utilize the advantages only to take care of the infant. But the state claimed that in April of 2010 and December 2014, the month that Rhonda's mom stated that the young child resided with her. She had in fact been living with her state-accused father, Stephen, of Rhonda's mother, accused of embezzling public monies, roughly $40,000 in total, over a 5-year period. The defense lawyers for Rhonda's mother said that she was committed to stop Stephen from being granted custody, of she didn't want the daughter of his, and Rhonda Stephen will profit from the $1 million he has a life insurance coverage. Regarding Rhonda's life, the defense claimed the reasons behind Rhonda's mother's behavior were her wish to keep her granddaughter safe, to make sure she wasn't taken advantage of. As per the defense, the mother of Rhonda possessed a past of depression, which increased following the loss of her daughter. To help her deal with her loss, she grew dependent on marijuana to defend themselves. The defense team claimed she was a crutch user for the substance, and it affected her decision-making, and the judge's capacity for clear thought convicted the mother of Rhonda at the age of 53 to a halfway home for a month, and 3 years of probation was the punishment, enforced when the mother begged guilty of stealing from the government besides the prison term. And moreover, probation, Rhonda's mother was mandated to reimburse the lost benefits equivalent to $39,100. The daughter of Stephen and Rhonda had been in foster care ever since the Department of Inhuman Services custody. She was placed in October. This choice was taken in 2015 following Stephen has acknowledged engaging in sexual abuse in the 13-year-old girl's situation. As a result, an Oregon judge dismissed his parental rights, but Stephen filed and appealed this choice.